when HOA President Patricia kicked down my office door with a gun screaming about illegal business. She had no idea I was live on Zoom with 12 FBI agents investigating federal crimes. Her armed burglary was about to become the most watched arrest footage in internet history. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching, also like and subscribe for more stories. The Zoom call was supposed to be routine. I'd been working with the FBI Financial Crimes Task Force for 6 months, helping them investigate mortgage fraud across 3 states. My home office overlooked Crystal Lake, and I'd specifically bought this property for the quiet atmosphere perfect for sensitive government work. What I didn't expect was for Patricia Williams, our HOA president, to kick down my door while I was sharing my screen with 12 federal agents. It started 3 weeks earlier when Patricia decided my home office violated HOA regulations. According to her, running any business from a residential property was strictly forbidden, even though I'd been doing cybersecurity consulting from this same office for 4 years without issues. "Mr. Davidson, you're operating an illegal commercial enterprise," she'd announced during her first uninvited visit to my property. The HOA bylaws clearly state that Crystal Lake Estates is a residential-only community. I'd explained that I worked remotely as a federal contractor, but Patricia wasn't interested in details. She handed me a violation notice demanding I cease all business activities within 30 days or face daily fines of $500. "This is ridiculous," I told her. "Half the neighborhood works from home." "Not anymore," Patricia replied smugly. "I'm cleaning up this community, starting with obvious violators like yourself." I researched the HOA bylaws and found no mention of a home business prohibition. When I pointed this out to Patricia, she claimed the restriction was covered under maintaining residential character, which could be interpreted broadly. Over the following weeks, Patricia escalated her harassment campaign. She parked outside my house taking photos of visitors. She filed noise complaints about my video calls. She even tried to have my internet service disconnected, claiming excessive business usage violated neighborhood agreements. The situation became dangerous when Patricia started following me to meetings and photographing my license plate. She'd positioned herself as some kind of community watchdog, but her behavior felt more like stalking. I reported her activities to local police, but they said it was a civil HOA matter unless she committed a crime. Patricia was careful to stay just within legal boundaries while making my life miserable. The morning everything changed, I was preparing for a crucial briefing with the FBI task force. We were coordinating a major operation targeting a mortgage fraud ring that had stolen over $50 million from elderly victims across the region. My role was providing technical analysis of the fraudsters' digital footprints. The work required high-level security clearance and absolute confidentiality. Any interruption could compromise ongoing investigations. I'd locked my office door and activated privacy protocols for the video conference. 12 agents from different field offices were logged into the secure connection as I began presenting evidence of wire transfers linked to the fraud scheme. As you can see in Exhibit C, I was telling the team while highlighting suspicious bank records on my screen, the pattern shows systematic targeting of seniors in rural communities. That's when I heard my front door being kicked open. "Davidson." Patricia's voice echoed through my house. "I know you're running an illegal business in there." The FBI agents on screen immediately went silent. Agent Martinez, the task force leader, leaned forward with concern. "David, are you secure? Should we terminate this connection?" Before I could respond, Patricia was pounding on my office door. "Open up. I'm conducting an HOA inspection." "I'm in a confidential government meeting," I called out. "You need to leave immediately. I don't care what kind of business you're running. This ends today." Through my office window, I could see Patricia's car parked on my lawn. She'd apparently decided that normal trespassing wasn't enough and had escalated to breaking and entering. Agent Martinez was typing rapidly on his laptop. "David, we're tracing this location and dispatching local units. Keep your camera on but mute your audio." Patricia started trying to force my office door open. The lock held, but I could hear her ramming her shoulder against it repeatedly. "Davidson. I'm the HOA president. You have to let me in." The other agents on the Zoom call were watching this unfold in real time. Agent Chin from the San Francisco office looked stunned. "Is this person armed?" she typed in the chat. That question was answered when Patricia pulled out a handgun and shot the lock off my office door. The sound was deafening. Wood splinters flew as Patricia kicked the damaged door open and stormed into my office, waving the gun wildly. "You're under citizen's arrest for violating HOA regulations," she screamed, pointing the weapon directly at me. Every FBI agent on the screen was now standing and shouting into their phones. I kept my hands visible and tried to remain calm while Patricia waved a loaded gun 3 feet from my face. "Patricia, you need to put the gun down," I said as steadily as possible. "These are federal agents you're threatening. I don't care if they're the president. You're breaking HOA rules." Agent Martinez had his phone pressed to his ear while typing commands to the other agents. The chat window was exploding with urgent messages about emergency response protocols. Patricia noticed the computer screen showing 12 federal agents watching her commit multiple felonies in real time. "Who are these people?" she demanded, swinging the gun toward my laptop. "Ma'am, this is Agent Martinez with the FBI," Agent Martinez said clearly through the speakers. "You are currently threatening a federal contractor during an official investigation. Put down your weapon immediately." Patricia's face went pale, but she didn't lower the gun. "This is HOA business. You have no jurisdiction here." "Ma'am, you've just committed armed burglary, assault with a deadly weapon and interference with a federal investigation. Local and federal units are en route. Your only option is to surrender peacefully." I could hear sirens approaching in the distance. Patricia was trapped in my office with nowhere to go and 12 federal witnesses to her crimes. "They can't do this to me," she muttered, still holding the gun but looking confused and panicked. "I'm the HOA president. I have authority." "Your HOA authority doesn't include breaking into homes with weapons," I said carefully. "The FBI agents are trying to help you avoid making this worse." Patricia looked at the screen where Agent Martinez was speaking calmly. "Ma'am, I can see you're upset about community issues, but you've escalated this beyond HOA matters. Please set down the weapon so we can resolve this safely." The sirens were getting louder. Patricia realized she'd made a terrible mistake, but pride and panic were keeping her from thinking clearly. "I was just enforcing community standards," she said weakly, finally lowering the gun slightly. "Enforcing standards doesn't require firearms," Agent Chin said from her office in San Francisco. "Every moment you hold that weapon makes your situation worse." Police cars were pulling into my driveway. Through my window, I could see officers taking positions around the house. Patricia heard the vehicles and started crying. This wasn't supposed to happen. I just wanted him to stop running his business. "It's not too late to end this peacefully," Agent Martinez said. "Put the gun on the desk and step away from it." Patricia looked at me, then at the computer screen full of federal agents, then at the gun in her shaking hands. The weight of what she'd done was finally sinking in. "I'm the HOA president," she repeated quietly, as if that title could somehow protect her from the consequences of armed burglary. Local police were setting up outside my office window. I could see a SWAT team positioning equipment and negotiators preparing to make contact. Agent Martinez continued speaking in a calm, professional tone. "Ma'am, you have children and grandchildren who need you to make the right choice. Set down the weapon and surrender to the officers outside." That mention of her family seemed to break through Patricia's panic. She slowly placed the gun on my desk and stepped back with her hands raised. "Patricia Williams, this is police," came a voice through a megaphone. "Exit the building with your hands visible." Patricia walked out of my office with her hands up. Through my window, I watched officers take her into custody without incident. The gun was secured as evidence and my office became part of a crime scene. Agent Martinez and the task force stayed on the Zoom call while police processed the scene. They needed to document how the incident had affected our investigation and ensure no classified information had been compromised. "David, are you injured?" Agent Martinez asked once Patricia was safely in custody. "No, just shaken up." "Is our investigation compromised?" "We'll need to review security protocols, but the operation can continue." Your quick thinking kept the situation from escalating further. The local police detective, Sergeant Rodriguez, asked to speak with the FBI agents to coordinate charges. Patricia was looking at federal crimes in addition to state charges for the armed burglary. Within hours, news of the incident spread throughout our community. Neighbors were shocked that their HOA president had committed armed burglary over a home office dispute. Tom Henderson, who lived 2 houses down, called me that evening. "I can't believe Patricia went that far. We all knew she was getting too aggressive with the HOA enforcement, but nobody expected her to start breaking down doors with a gun." The story made national news when body camera footage was released showing Patricia being arrested while FBI agents watched live on video conference. "HOA president commits armed burglary during FBI meeting," became a viral headline. Patricia's lawyer tried to claim she was having a mental health crisis and wasn't responsible for her actions. However, text messages recovered from her phone showed she'd been planning the break-in for days and had specifically brought the gun to intimidate me. The federal charges were serious. Interfering with a federal investigation carried a potential 10-year sentence. Armed burglary was another 5 to 15 years under state law. Patricia's family hired an expensive criminal defense attorney who argued she'd been under stress from HOA responsibilities and had made an error in judgment. My client is a respected member of the community who became overzealous in enforcing neighborhood standards, the lawyer told reporters. This was never intended to harm anyone. However, the FBI's investigation revealed Patricia had been abusing her HOA position for over 2 years. She'd been collecting fines that didn't exist in the bylaws and using threats to force compliance with made-up rules. Agent Martinez testified at Patricia's hearing that she'd shown no remorse during the incident and had continued threatening me even after being told she was interfering with a federal investigation. The defendant's behavior showed complete disregard for the law and a dangerous willingness to use violence to enforce her personal agenda, Agent Martinez stated in court. Patricia pleaded guilty to federal interference charges and state armed burglary charges as part of a plea deal. She received 7 years in federal prison followed by 3 years of supervised release. Her HOA presidency was immediately terminated, and the community voted to dissolve the association entirely rather than risk future corruption. Property values actually increased after the HOA was eliminated. People preferred living in a neighborhood without an armed dictator enforcing arbitrary rules at gunpoint. My federal contract work continued without further incident. The FBI task force successfully completed their mortgage fraud investigation, resulting in 23 arrests and recovery of $31 million in stolen funds. The irony wasn't lost on anyone that Patricia's attempt to stop my illegal business had actually helped federal agents capture her crimes on video and build an airtight case against her. 6 months later, I received a letter from Patricia in federal prison. She claimed she'd been trying to protect the community and didn't understand why everyone had turned against her. I was just doing my job as HOA president, she wrote. All I wanted was to maintain our property values and neighborhood standards. Even from prison, Patricia still didn't understand that HOA authority doesn't include the right to commit armed robbery. My home office remains exactly where it's always been, overlooking Crystal Lake in peaceful quiet. The bullet hole in my door frame serves as a reminder of what can happen when petty authority meets federal law enforcement. The FBI agents who witnessed Patricia's breakdown still reference the incident during training sessions about maintaining security during video conferences. They call it the HOA case, and use it to teach agents about unexpected threats during sensitive operations. Sometimes I look out my window at the lake and think about how Patricia's obsession with controlling her neighbors led to her losing everything. She went from HOA president to federal prisoner because she couldn't accept that some things are beyond her authority. The community is safer now without an armed HOA dictator making up rules and enforcing them with violence. Neighbors actually talk to each other again instead of living in fear of Patricia's next arbitrary violation notice. My work with federal law enforcement continues, protecting people from criminals who steal money and threaten communities. The difference is that now I help catch real criminals instead of being threatened by fake authority figures with guns. Patricia thought she could intimidate me into abandoning my federal contract work. Instead, she gave the FBI a perfect example of how not to handle community disputes and earned herself a lengthy prison sentence in the process. Sometimes justice comes from the most unexpected places, like an HOA president committing federal crimes while FBI agents watch live on video conference. The aftermath of Patricia's arrest sent shockwaves through our entire region. Within 24 hours, the story was trending on social media with hashtags like #HOAKaren and #FBIZoomCall. The body camera footage became the most watched police video of the year. Patricia's mugshot appeared on every major news network. Her wild-eyed expression and disheveled appearance told the story of someone who had completely lost touch with reality. Legal experts on TV called it the most spectacular HOA overreach in American history. Her family tried to distance themselves from the incident. Patricia's husband, Robert, filed for divorce within a week of her arrest. He claimed he'd had no idea about her increasingly erratic behavior and feared for his own safety. I've been married to Patricia for 22 years, Robert told reporters. The woman who broke down that door with a gun isn't the person I married. She became obsessed with controlling the neighborhood and lost all sense of proportion. Patricia's adult children released a statement saying they were horrified and embarrassed by their mother's actions. They apologized to me personally and offered to pay for damages to my home. The gun Patricia used belonged to Robert. Police discovered she'd taken it from their bedroom safe without his knowledge. Robert cooperated fully with investigators and turned over the safe combination. Ballistics tests showed the weapon had been fired only once, when Patricia shot my office door lock. She'd apparently bought the gun specifically for intimidating neighbors, not for any legitimate self-defense purpose. The FBI's investigation into Patricia's background revealed a pattern of escalating behavior over several years. Before becoming HOA president, she'd been banned from her children's schools for aggressive confrontations with teachers and administrators. She'd also been fired from 2 jobs for harassment and insubordination. Her former colleagues described her as someone who couldn't accept that other people had authority over her decisions. Agent Martinez explained to reporters how rare it was for federal agents to witness crimes being committed in real time during video conferences. "In my 15 years with the Bureau, I've never seen anything like this," he said. "Usually we investigate crimes after they happen. Having video evidence of the entire incident from start to finish made this case unique." The technical team that managed our secure communications had to review their protocols after the incident. They implemented new procedures for handling security breaches during sensitive video conferences. My neighbors held a community meeting to discuss dissolving the HOA permanently. The vote was unanimous. Nobody wanted to risk another Patricia-style dictator gaining power over their homes. "We all moved here for peace and quiet," said elderly neighbor Mrs. Chin. "Patricia turned our neighborhood into a police state. We're better off without any HOA at all." Property values increased by 12% within 6 months of the HOA dissolution. Real estate agents reported that buyers specifically sought out our area because it had no HOA restrictions. The lack of arbitrary rules and armed enforcement became a major selling point. Patricia's trial became a media circus. Her defense attorney, Marcus Webb, tried every possible strategy to reduce her sentence. He claimed she suffered from stress-induced psychosis caused by HOA responsibilities. "My client was overwhelmed by the burden of maintaining community standards," Webb argued in court. "She made a tragic error in judgment but never intended to harm anyone." The prosecution, led by federal prosecutor Sarah Kim, painted a different picture. She presented evidence of Patricia's systematic abuse of power and deliberate intimidation tactics. "This wasn't a momentary lapse in judgment," Kim told the jury. "The defendant spent weeks planning this armed invasion. She brought a loaded weapon to terrorize a federal contractor doing classified work for the United States government." Character witnesses for Patricia were hard to find. Most neighbors refused to testify on her behalf, citing their own experiences with her harassment and threats. The few supporters who did appear described someone who had good intentions, but had lost her way. Even they admitted Patricia's methods were inappropriate and dangerous. Dr. Jennifer Hayes, a psychiatrist who evaluated Patricia, testified that she showed signs of narcissistic personality disorder and an inability to accept that others had rights she couldn't override. The defendant genuinely believed her position as HOA president gave her unlimited authority over her neighbors' lives, Dr. Hayes explained. She couldn't comprehend that federal law superseded her perceived community authority. During sentencing, Patricia finally spoke in her own defense. Her statement revealed she still didn't understand the severity of her crimes. "I was trying to protect our community from inappropriate business activities," she told Judge Morrison. "I never meant for things to go so far, but nobody would listen to my concerns about maintaining residential standards." Judge Morrison wasn't sympathetic. "Mrs. Williams, you committed armed burglary against a federal contractor engaged in classified work. Your actions endangered national security investigations and terrorized an innocent citizen. The fact that you still justify this behavior shows you pose a continued danger to society." The judge sentenced Patricia to 8 years in federal prison, followed by 5 years of supervised release. She was also ordered to pay $50,000 in restitution for damages and trauma counseling. Patricia's reaction to the sentence shocked everyone in the courtroom. Instead of showing remorse, she screamed at the judge that the punishment was unfair and that she was the real victim of government overreach. "This is what happens when people don't respect community authority," she yelled as bailiffs led her away. "I was protecting property values." Her outburst resulted in an additional contempt of court charge and 6 months added to her sentence. The FBI used Patricia's case in training materials for new agents. The incident became a textbook example of how to handle unexpected security threats during video conferences. Agent Martinez was promoted to regional supervisor partly based on his calm leadership during the crisis. He credited his team's quick response with preventing the situation from becoming much worse. If Patricia had been dealing with someone less experienced in federal operations, this could have ended tragically, he told his superiors. The victim's cooperation and our coordinated response kept everyone safe. My work with the FBI task force continued and expanded. The mortgage fraud case we've been working on resulted in the largest financial crime conviction in the district's history. The criminals were sentenced to a combined 127 years in prison. 6 months after Patricia's sentencing, I received a letter from her in federal prison. She was still trying to justify her actions and claim she'd been unfairly persecuted. If you had just followed HOA rules, none of this would have happened, she wrote. I was only trying to maintain our community standards, and now everyone acts like I'm some kind of criminal. The letter revealed Patricia's complete inability to understand that armed burglary is a serious crime regardless of her motivations. Even in prison, she saw herself as a victim of circumstance rather than the perpetrator of violence. I didn't respond to her letter, but I did forward it to her probation officer as evidence that she hadn't accepted responsibility for her actions. A year later, Patricia tried to appeal her conviction. Her new lawyer argued that the federal charges were inappropriate because she'd been focused on local HOA matters, not interfering with government work. The appeal was denied unanimously by a 3-judge panel. Judge Rodriguez, writing for the court, noted that armed burglary during a federal investigation constitutes clear interference regardless of the defendant's stated motivations. Meanwhile, our neighborhood had become a model for communities considering HOA dissolution. Real estate websites featured articles about our area as an example of how property values could increase without restrictive covenants. Tom Henderson, our former neighbor, started a consulting business helping other communities evaluate their HOA structures. He used Patricia's case as a cautionary tale about unchecked authority. When one person has too much power over other people's homes, bad things happen, he would tell potential clients. The Patricia Williams case shows what can go wrong when there's no accountability. My home office became something of a local landmark. Visitors would ask to see where the famous FBI Zoom call took place. The bullet hole in my door frame was preserved as a reminder of what happened. The FBI installed additional security measures at my home after the incident. Motion sensors, upgraded cameras, and a direct line to federal dispatch ensured that any future threats would be handled immediately. 3 years after Patricia's conviction, she was denied early release despite good behavior in prison. The parole board cited her continued refusal to accept responsibility and her letters claiming she'd been unjustly prosecuted. The defendant continues to believe she was entitled to use armed force to enforce community rules, the board noted in their decision. This attitude suggests she would pose a continued risk if released early. Patricia's husband Robert remarried and moved to another state. He changed his name legally to distance himself from Patricia's notoriety. Their children also relocated and avoided any media attention. The house where Patricia had lived was sold at a significant loss. The new owners renovated extensively and installed their own home offices, working remotely without fear of armed HOA presidents. My federal contract work expanded to include training other cybersecurity professionals in threat assessment and crisis response. The Patricia incident had taught me valuable lessons about remaining calm under extreme pressure. 5 years after the shooting, I was invited to speak at a national conference on workplace security. My presentation, titled, "When Home Office Meets Federal Investigation," became one of the most requested topics at security seminars. The audience always gasped when I showed the actual body camera footage of Patricia's arrest. Seeing an HOA president led away in handcuffs while FBI agents watched on Zoom never failed to make an impression. During the Q&A session, someone always asked if I'd forgiven Patricia for what she did. My answer was always the same: forgiveness is personal, but justice is public. She committed serious crimes and deserved serious consequences. Patricia was finally released from federal prison after serving 7 years of her 8-year sentence. She was immediately transferred to state custody to serve an additional 2 years for the armed burglary conviction. Upon her eventual release, Patricia was required to live in a halfway house and work minimum wage jobs to pay her restitution. Her federal conviction meant she couldn't work in any position requiring trust or authority. Reports from her probation officer indicated she was working at a fast food restaurant and taking public transportation. The woman who once terrorized neighbors with arbitrary fines was now earning $12 per hour and living paycheck to paycheck. 6 months after her final release, Patricia violated her probation by approaching my property. Security cameras caught her walking past my house multiple times and taking photos with her phone. She was arrested and returned to prison for 6 months. The judge warned that any further contact with me or my property would result in additional federal charges for stalking. That was the last time Patricia appeared in my life directly. Occasional updates from law enforcement indicated she'd moved to a different state and was working various low-paying jobs under strict supervision. My home office continued to be my peaceful workspace overlooking Crystal Lake. The security upgrades and neighborhood watch program ensured that no future HOA presidents would be breaking down doors with weapons. The story of Patricia Williams became a case study in multiple fields: criminology, community governance, federal law enforcement, and workplace security. Universities used the incident to teach students about power dynamics and legal boundaries. 10 years later, I still receive occasional calls from reporters doing anniversary stories about the HOA Karen who shot her way into FBI history. Patricia's mugshot remains one of the most recognizable images of HOA overreach gone wrong. The lesson of Patricia's downfall is simple. No community position gives anyone the right to commit armed crimes against their neighbors. Her 8-year journey from HOA president to federal prisoner serves as a permanent reminder that real authority comes from law, not weapons. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Patricia had simply accepted that my home office was legal and left me alone. She might still be HOA president, still living in her nice house, still married to Robert. Instead, her inability to accept limits on her authority destroyed everything she claimed to be protecting. The community is safer, property values are higher, and neighbors get along better without her armed enforcement of arbitrary rules. Justice took its time in Patricia's case, but it was thorough and complete. From the moment she kicked down my door with a gun to her final arrest for violating probation, every step demonstrated that federal law doesn't bend to local tyrants. My work with the FBI continues, protecting communities from real criminals instead of being threatened by fake authority figures. The difference between actual law enforcement and HOA vigilantism couldn't be clearer after experiencing both firsthand. Patricia Williams will be remembered as the HOA president who brought a gun to a federal investigation and lost everything as a result. Her legacy serves as a warning to anyone who thinks community authority includes the right to terrorize neighbors with violence.